Hello there folks, welcome back to the Chap's Guide. My name is Ash and I am your host on this journey through men's style, self-development and personal grooming. Now today it is literally a video about talking because I'm going to respond to a comment which I received on one of my recent videos, and it made me really think about the way that we speak, the tool of our communication, the voice, and how we use it. And I explain this as we go along, but Mira wrote to me and said, how do I change my accent to your British accent? I want to sound sophisticated, educated and royal. Please guide me. Well, it's a simple question, but one which isn't a simple answer, because I think first of all, we have to unpick a little bit of why you think my accent is somewhat more attractive than perhaps the one which you have. Unfortunately, I don't know where you're from, so I can't draw a comparison. But it is a fair question, and it's a question which goes deeper than beyond mere pronunciation. Because we live in a world, do we not, where first impressions are very important. And especially in professional, social, and even romantic contexts, the way that you speak is perhaps often one of the first things that people get to know about you. Even before an idea or a thought that you have ever is exchanged between people, the medium by which we communicate, our voice and the way that we speak, is actually, it lands with people and they form an impression about you. And it is very much influenced, or is an influence in the way that we are perceived by people. Because I know that if you have an accent which is attractive to other people, it has connotations very much of intelligence, in credibility, and even in status in life. People will draw, even wrongly, an impression that you are from a certain class, you have a certain education, you are of a professional leaning towards life, opposed to other people who may be fully qualified in all of those fields, but the way that they speak doesn't portray it in the way that somebody with a specific type of accent does. Now, the British accent is often, or particularly the type of British accent which people find attractive, it's actually called received pronunciation, or RP, right? And this is what you'll be familiar with, particularly if your impression of British people comes from the movies or mass media. Now, the UK, actually, Britain, is a very, very diverse country when it comes to accents. Now, RP, received pronunciation, is actually only spoken by a very small percentage of the population. The majority of us speak in regional accents. Now, anybody from the UK hearing me talk would immediately know that I am Welsh, because I have a regional Welsh accent. Even though I make efforts to try and speak as well as I can, the way that I speak will come across. It would be the same if you're Scottish, if you're from Cornwall, if you're from the home counties. We all have our regional accents, particularly the north. Further north you go, they tend to be quite distinct accents, even dialects. If you're from Newcastle or Manchester, and the further north, each area will have its own accent in the way that we speak, and we can clearly identify each other within the country from where we're from. But it's that received pronunciation that people strive for, particularly if you're from another country. It holds a lot of prestige in the wider English-speaking world, the RP style accent, because it does kind of imply that you've got a certain education, there's a certain sort of refinement, even authority. Because when you hear authority figures speaking, people like the king, people normally in government, they will be from a background where they do speak in that small proportion of the population who use the RP style accent. So why is it that we find the RP accent attractive? Don't worry, I am going to give you some actionable tips on how you can improve whatever accent you currently have and take some of the things which you likely find attractive from the RP or British accent and use it in your own accent. You don't have to mimic the accent of another country. You can just use elements of the RP or British accent to improve the accent that you currently have. Let's not pretend to be anything that we're not, but certainly I think we can improve where you are. So let's explore really why the British accent has this high standing. Why does it have this perception of being more prestigious? Well, there's some good reasons for it, and there's a lot of research which I delved into to discover this. Now, there's a thing called accent bias. It's present here in the UK. As I say, we're a country of diverse accents, particularly when we go abroad to other countries and people hear the way we speak, they get even more so of that accent bias. Now, in the UK, research shows by York University, so credible research, only about 3% of the UK population speak with the received pronunciation or RP accent. But despite that, it absolutely remains the gold standard in certain professions. Things like banking, politics and law, where if you have an RP accent, it's certainly going to be to your advantage. Even much broader across the professional world, any sort of employment, 76% of employers will admit that accent influences their hiring decisions. And they will often say that they would favour, unconsciously, received pronunciation accents over regional or international accents. And that comes from credible research. So accent bias is present. It does impact in the way that we can make progress in our lives. RP is, even in the UK, where the accent is generally considered to be more attractive by people in other countries than maybe other English-speaking accents, RP is the most prestigious even within the UK. Although, there have been changing attitudes within British culture as we now, celebrate our regional accents more so. It's certainly not a bar. If you have a Manchester accent or a Scottish accent or a Welsh accent, it's not a bar to getting on in life, but still, RP is that prestigious one which people want. It ranks highest in terms of perceived intelligence, education, and authority in research. And that's why it's widely used by broadcasters, diplomats, and voiceover professionals for precisely that reason. They know that if somebody on the news, for instance, on the BBC, is delivering the news in a received pronunciation accent, we tend to listen more attentively. We perceive that person as having more authority. This is exactly the reason why in many Hollywood movies you will note that the villain or the bad guy is often played by a British character, because that RP accent that they're able to deploy, yes, it provides a element of authority, professionalism, but alongside that, portrayed in a certain way, it can be used to demonstrate menace and foreboding, because some people are intimidated by that RP accent. And a study of accent perception shows that RP ranks most highly for credibility and even attractiveness. Again, credible research shows that in an experiment where participants were asked to rate speakers based on their voice alone, consistently findings showed that RP speakers were perceived as more competent, more trustworthy, and even more physically attractive, even when the person had not been seen. Now, if you're watching this in North America, research shows that the British accent has this thing which they call exotic intelligentsia effect around it. So that because you don't hear the British accent or the RP accent very often, it has a certain exotic element to it, and that intelligentsia suggesting that that person is probably far more intelligent than they really are. I mean, I can attest to this myself. I, in my younger years, used to travel around the States very often on my holidays with my friends, on fly drives. We used to drive around states. the southern states, Texas, New Mexico, places like that, Arizona, where we used to go for a bit of sun in our wintertime. And I would often find that when I walked into a bar or a restaurant or something like that, as a younger man, I would order a drink at the bar, and it would have the most profound effect on the people at the bar. Strangers would turn to me and ask me where I was from, and they would engage me in a conversation. I would consider my accent to be rather not RP, actually. I'm not, received pronunciation. I'm not from that class where RP, I don't believe I'm from that 3% where people speak with RP accent. But people, Americans, would say to me, go on, say something. They would encourage me to speak so that they could hear my accent. It has this exotic element to it. Very useful when you're a young man going into a bar and wanting to chat up girls, admittedly, but it also has other much more positive elements to it as well. Imagine if you're in maybe in the retail world and you're trying to sell something to somebody, and your accent alone imbues you with an element of trustworthiness and professionalism and credibility. You're already halfway across the line, even without communicating anything other than just your voice. So it can be quite useful for you. So it can be beneficial to improve the way that you speak. So I do have some actionable tips for you that you can employ. You can train yourself to take some of the qualities that people find attractive in the RP British accent and employ it in your own accent. It's not to say that we're trying to mimic a British accent, because if you're not British, what's the point, right? You're pretending to be something you're not. But you can use what is attractive in that accent and deploy it in your own accent for positive outcomes. So the first thing I would say, and this comes from me directly as a professional public speaker as well, and somebody who's involved in the world of communication. So I use my voice as a tool all of the time. And this is something that I notice in other people where they don't get this under control. It can run away with you, and it is this: slow the pace of how you speak, because it gives you a far more cultured tone, and control your volume a little bit. So slow down, turn the volume down, because the RP accent, it is kind of marked by a steady, measured rhythm, a calm delivery, right? It's not excited. This is something which I think, particularly North Americans, this is where they find the difference between their accent and a British accent. I have found, traveling extensively in America and meeting Americans all over the world, they tend to speak quite quickly. They tend to speak with an increased volume. They like to be loud, confident. This is why often Americans are considered to be somewhat brash. I think it's nothing to do with being brash at all. It's just about the way they speak. Slow it down, measure the pace, turn down the volume. It adds a sense of gravitas and a sense of purpose to what you're saying. And I'm consciously slowing down what I'm saying now. I'm reducing my tone. It makes people listen more intently to you just by doing that. And you will note that slowing things down, it allows you to enunciate your words much better. If you're speaking very quickly, you tend to round off your words. You speak fast. You're often speaking slang. Whereas speaking slowly, it allows you to put those words out there, fully form them, deliver them. And if you slow the volume down a little, people are more inclined to listen. They want to hear what you're saying. It can work very positively. Allow space for your listener to hear. That's the way to think about it. Now, my next tip for you is just simply to refine your vowels and your consonant sounds when you speak. Try to speak with neutral clarity in the way that you deliver your words. Even subtle articulation can improve the way that your words land with people. A couple of words which are often, I hear, being perhaps enunciated poorly, or the vowels not coming out properly. Let's use the word bottle, right? Bottle. You can hear me, the T's, in the way which I say bottle. Often I hear people, they say bottle, bottle. It's almost like the T's have been exchanged for the letter D, bottle, bottle. The word T is an important, it's double T, enunciated properly. And another one, water, right? Water. There's a T in the middle of the word water. When I say water, you hear the T, not water, water. It's almost like I'm exchanging the T for another D. It's water, not water. Can you understand where I'm coming from? Think about what you're saying. You're not mimicking a posh accent, all right? What you're doing is just actually saying the words how they are meant to be said, how they are written. You're using the letters in the words as it's intended. Bottled water, not bottled water. You get where I'm coming from? And finally, and this is always the case when it comes to any performance, practice, right? Practice, practice, and with a bit of purpose. Now, a good thing, if there is an actor, a British actor, and I could name any number of British actors who are particularly good at the spoken word: Jeremy Irons, Patrick Stewart. Go and look up some of his old Star Trek Next Generation performances. And, the way that he stands out amongst the crew, even though he's playing a Frenchman, is actually he has a classic example of received pronunciation delivery. He is a trained classical Shakespearean actor, and he speaks, even though he's from the north of England, I think he's from up Hull way somewhere, but he speaks in a very RP style because he employs all of these techniques. Listen to him saying a couple of sentences, right? Call him up on YouTube or something, and then say those words yourself. Mimic him. Practice what he is saying. Listen to him, do it yourself. Listen to him, do it yourself. It is using him, and you can use anybody, right, as an online mentor to get you used to employing those characteristics which RP, or received pronunciation, can bring to your accent to make you sound a little more professional in life. And you can then obtain those benefits which come from appearing more prestigious, having more status, better education, trustworthiness, more authority in life. Bring it in slowly, do a bit of practice, and of course when you're practicing, record yourself. Listen to what you're saying. I think there might even be apps available which you can download onto your devices, which will allow you to improve your pronunciation, your enunciation. And that will allow you to improve that accent and benefit from the RP. Who knows? You might even be mistaken for a Brit and get asked to play a villain in some sort of movie or play, because that seems to be the roles which we tend to get in Hollywood these days. So give it a go. Or listen to James Bond. He's a very good example in most cases of the RP accent being used to convey authority, prestige, and a bit of malignant intent. So give it a go. Why not? What have you got to lose? All you can gain is the ability to speak a little better, and who's going to argue with that? So I hope you've enjoyed today's video. If you have, like the video, subscribe for more. If you want to come on this journey with me towards Chap Nirvana, become a patron. Tiny monthly fee, more exclusive content directly from me, and a personal one-to-one interaction with me should you wish to have that. And don't forget, I now have a second YouTube channel called The Chap Reviews, in which I give my observations on recently released movies, classic movies, books, and things like that. The links are all in the show notes below. So remember, it's bottled water, not bottled water. And I'll see you again very soon.
Sound of